Well, we have a great show today. I'm going to go a little bit early today and bring our next guest in. Welcome, Mr. Greggory Wood from Business Incentive Solutions.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So, Greg, tell us a little bit about. I'll refer to BIS. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, we're in the niche area of recovering, identifying, and helping small to medium-sized business owners take advantage of incentives, credits, rebates, programs that are available to them.
So can I refer to this as found money?
You can. Absolutely. And that's exactly what it is. So we primarily focus on the small to medium-sized business owner. There's a disproportionate number of large companies that do this.
Tell me what you mean by small to medium-sized business. What does that look like?
Well, small business is anywhere from 9 to 49 employees. Medium-sized businesses go all the way up to 500 employees. So we're able to help any and all of those businesses. We're able to help large businesses as well, but our focus is on that small to medium.
Yeah, and I think that if you get into a large business, they've got the big budget and they bring in the big people to handle everything, so they've probably got it nailed down, whereas the small to medium-sized business is too busy doing what they're doing to focus on
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, well, tell me, here's one of the important questions I have is, I'm a small to medium-sized business. I've been doing things well. I hire the best CPA in town. I do all that. Why isn't he getting all this for me?
It's a different job altogether. So anybody would think, well, my CPA should do this. A credit, even if it's called a tax credit, is really not a tax issue. It's a behavioral issue. So we identify and focus on the business behaviors. Are they hiring? Are they developing their business? Are they innovating? Are they manufacturing? Are they exhibiting behaviors that governmental programs incentivize and encourage them to exhibit these behaviors? Okay. It's not a tax issue. So this is just not something that the tax preparer or the CPA generally does. It's not to say that there aren't CPA firms, of course, out there that do this, but the mistake is a business owner thinking, well,
you're actually kind of an outsource for the CPA firm anyway, because if a CPA firm wants to do the investigation for the client,
bingo,
they're going to have to hire you.
That's exactly right. So we have strong relationships with CPA firms because we don't do what they do, and they generally don't do what we do. So it's a very nice fit.
Well, let's talk about exactly what you do. What does it mean, business incentive services? You say you help them find incentives. I thought all the incentives in terms of things like rebates were all created by the companies themselves, not out there somewhere for a company to go and tap into.
It's a great point. It's a good question. Business incentives, there are programs that incentivize businesses to behave a certain way, whether that's manufacturing, whether it's hiring the right individual, hire a hero, whether it is a behavior that the government incentivizes to exhibit this behavior. So whether that is, again, innovating or changing, experimenting with their product, their process, or their formula, whether it is hiring, these are behaviors that business owners exhibit all the time. They just don't realize, generally the small to medium-sized business owner, they're unaware that they're rewarded for exhibiting these behaviors through the form of a credit. So,
well, let me slow you down there for a second, because it was an interesting point that we talked about before the show. Is so many people out there are so busy doing what they're doing that they'll walk into their CPA at the end of the year and say, "Here's my shoebox full of receipts, and go do your magic." Okay, when people hear the word credit, I don't think too many people understand the difference between a credit and a deduction. So why don't you explain that for us?
So that's a great point, Barry. This is not a deduction. So this is a dollar for dollar credit. So for example, if you manufacture a product or you exhibit behaviors that are qualified activities or qualified behaviors, you're entitled to a dollar for dollar credit. So this is not the deduction. This is where kind of the split comes, because the CPA or the tax professional will generally focus on compliance, end of the year reports, etc. We focus on those behaviors that will generate a dollar for dollar credit. So these are not judgment based. It's not, well, that deduction is too high. we'll give it to you, but Andre, we won't give it to you. This is a credit that's based on behavior.
So if I can simplify that, I'd love to simplify since we've had so many CPAs on.
Yeah.
Okay? If I can simplify that, if I take a deduction that reduces my income, so the value of that deduction is whatever my marginal income tax bracket is, okay? But if I get a credit, whatever my net tax cost is, that credit will pay dollar for dollar to pay my tax bill.
That's right. And so many of these credits, they carry forward. So let's say you have a tax liability, you exhibit the behaviors, the credits are generated and quantified, and if there are leftover credits, those credits carry forward. Some federal programs, they carry forward 20 years. So the next tax season, you have carry forward credits. That's the idea. If you look at the programs from the president to the governor, the mayor, all the way down to the business owner, it's a win-win-win-win, because the idea is to bring more money back into the business. It's all about hiring and creating jobs, because if these monies are coming back into the business, they're in a better position to hire more people. They're more successful. And you're exactly right. This is to offset, reduce, or eliminate the business's tax liability.
So if I want the government to pay my taxes for me, then I get tax credits and the government pays the bill.
In so many words, yes. If you're exhibiting those behaviors, the idea is you're rewarded and you're incentivized to continue doing that, and that's exactly right.
Yeah, interesting. You're listening to Close Up on San Diego Business here on KCBQ, streaming live on the web at am1170theanswer.com. Give us a tweet at CloseUpSD or email me at barry@closeupsandiego.com. You can find our page on Facebook as well. We want to hear from you. I'm your host, Barry Waxler, here with my co-host, Andrea Kay, Urban Miaris, and our guest is Mr. Greg Wood from Business Incentive Solutions. So I'll put it out this way, Greg. You sound like you bringing great value to a small business owner. That has to be expensive. How do you charge for your service?
Well, we're contingency-based, so our clients love that. It's found money, as you mentioned in the beginning. So we're finding money that is they're not only entitled to, but they essentially paid unnecessarily. So we're contingency-based. If there's nothing there, we part as friends either way. So we go into the business, which our clients love. They don't gather everything in a wheelbarrow and come to us. We go into the business, sit and determine through a feasibility study what their behaviors are that may qualify for different credits. Federally, there are 7,000 different credits, so we're not dealing with 7,000 credits. We deal with those credits that we know very, very well. So we look at the behaviors and we charge a percentage of what is recovered, and that's not done until we know that there's a recovery there.
Are there some examples of some behaviors and some? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. You're looking at engineering firms, if they are manufacturing a product, if they experimented with their product, if they experiment with a different raw material. We have a client that's a furniture manufacturer.
So let's say they've experimented and they've come up with a new material. Then what happens?
Well, you look at the formula of a qualified activity. So let's say they're experimenting and they're bringing in different materials. Those activities qualify, for example, as an R&D activity. There are then qualified research expenditures that are related to those activities. That formula of qualified activities and qualified research expenditures will generate a credit. So quantifying those activities into a credit amount, that's where we come in, and we're the experts, because it's not just simply checking a box and saying, okay.
Is this why clothes detergents are constantly changing and saying new and improved Tide? Constantly, every time I turn around, there's new and improved Tide.
Right. Well, yeah, I would think so, because if they're experimenting, expanding, changing, altering, developing their business, this is what is determined as a qualified activity. So we're focused on what those activities are. Generally, the CPA is not focused on what the activities are, who they hired, etc. So
the CPA is typically the historian. The historian being the business goes out, generates the activity, generates the expense, the income or the expense, hands it off to the CPA. He takes that, plugs it into the right lines, does a little bit of research to make sure that everything fits, and hands it back to the client and say, this is your net result. What you're doing is you're creating additional monies for the client based upon things they're qualified for. Government puts this stuff out for a reason, and that takes me to the next question I have for you is, how many small businesses out there are qualified for these incentives that don't know it today?
Great question. Well, 19 out of 20 small businesses, small and medium businesses that are fully entitled to these incentives don't take advantage of it.
Wow.
95% of the businesses that would
Why? Why wouldn't somebody do it?
Just completely unaware. They're focused on other activities, running their business, making payroll, spinning plates. They're just not aware that they're sitting on top of credits that they're entitled to. So once you crack the lid, especially with the business owner, and they understand, it's tremendously enlightening. It's like, wow, I never knew this existed. Therein lies generally the question of my preparer. We work hand in hand. We love the CPA because we have a strategic alignment with every preparer because it benefits the business owner.
Well, it's not just the CPA. Every financial planner out there working with a small business needs to help their clients find this lost money.
Right.
Exactly.
So you're like doing forensics.
It is.
It's like CSI of the businesses.
Funny, because it's common for us to say, look, it's forensic accounting. It's not a tax issue. It's not. What we're doing is drilling down deep to say, what are these behaviors? And of course, there are a wide variety of behaviors that are very basic. So whether it's just a surface behavior, manufacturing something, developing something, or we drill down deep to determine what they're doing and what they're entitled to. And for the most part, they've been, since the beginning of their business, they've been exhibiting these behaviors. They just don't
How
realize
far can somebody go back? If let's say they've been in business for a long time, whatever that period is, and they haven't taken advantage of any of these incentives, how far can they go back? Is it just a matter of how far you can amend your tax return?
Great question. Federal programs, you can go retroactive 3 years. Okay. State programs here in California, 4 years. So if a business has been in business and they are profitable and they are successful and they exhibit these behaviors, we as a business go in, meet with the business owners, determine what those behaviors are, and then we go to work. So that is the process of determining what they're entitled to. We can go back 3 years. Some programs, like the Work Opportunity Tax Credit, doesn't go retroactive; it goes forward. So we're in there in the trenches, determining what they do and what they're entitled to.
So you can go back 3 years. Then a smaller, mid-sized business owner might be saying, "Well, if you can go that far back, then this must be a really time-consuming process. And how do I know how long it's going to take, and how much of my valuable time it's going to take, and whether or not it's going to be worth it on the other end in terms of dollars found?"
No, it's not only a valid point, but it's a common one. So this is not tremendously time or labor intensive on the business owner. That's what we do. So we meet with the business owner. They continue working. They don't drop everything to do what we do. We do all the work A to Z. If there's nothing there, we part as friends either way. But then we do the work, and it's a great question because it is a deterrent. They think, my goodness, I just don't have time for this, or my staff. Well, Barry, you mentioned earlier kind of an outsourced component. That's what we do, and that's how.
Do you do consulting with startup businesses to let them know beforehand for their business plan? And what about angel investors or venture capitalists?
Yes and yes. We don't spend a lot of time focusing as a marketing angle with startups because they, for the most part, have not been in business. But personally, I love to meet with startups, with business groups, with networking groups. We conduct a business breakfast that we do ongoing to educate business owners. A startup business, if there's one area they need to be educated about, it's this, so they know what they're...
Because it's not covered. It's
not.
It's not. I can't remember ever seeing it in the business plan except by an existing, business owner that just changed names.
Well, let me slow everyone down. We are running short on time here. So, Greg, I know.
Right?
We're going to carry this story
you got Urban's juices flowing now on this one, baby.
Tell our listeners how they find out more about you.
We are at www.businessincentivesolutions.com. overlook.com. Right, our Facebook link is there. We would love to hear from anybody that we can talk with. That we receive a tremendous amount of referrals, and we're here to do what we can.
Well, I'm going to definitely follow up with you and see if we can't keep this story running. We are out of time, so I've got to go. But I appreciate you being with us.
Thank you so much. I had a pleasure.
Great. This is Close Up on San Diego Business here on KCBQ, streaming live on the web at am1170theanswer.com. Send us a tweet at CloseUpSD, or just find our page on Facebook. You can always email me at barry@closeupsandiego.com. Let me know what you think. I'm your host, Barry Waxler, and we will be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Taking care of business and working overtime. What else?